Welcome to your Houston Rewind for the last full week of October. I'm KHU 11 digital anchor Brandy Smith. We're busy, you're busy. This is a chance for us to catch up. Every weekend, we like to fill you in on some of the stories you may have missed. So let's rewind. Monday kicked off early voting ahead of the November midterm elections, and more than 46,000 people headed to the polls just in Harris County, clearly not discouraged by the lengthy ballot. At the West Gray Multi-Service Center, poll workers said a lot of folks just printed out their sample ballot to help speed up the process.
I've been looking at all the candidates and what we were voting on for a few weeks now and had a plan, and I like to make a plan so I can go in there and do what I have to do.
But I went through really fast because I'd already seen the sample ballot. I knew where the locations were.
Also Monday, a new poll revealed the race for Harris County judge is neck and neck. Incumbent Democrat Lina Hidalgo faces a major challenge from Republican Alexandra Mealer. The University of Houston poll puts Mealer ahead by 2 points. Gerald Harris looked at what appears to be the top motivator for voters in this race.
Our obligation to protect the most vulnerable, and that's what's not happened.
To elect somebody who's not afraid to stand on principle or to piss off people with money.
It's as close as you can get.
Right now, the county judge race is in a statistical dead heat with Alexandra Del Moral Mealer with a 2% advantage over Lina Hidalgo with 8% undecided. So right now, this is an effective tie.
Driving the choice for voters, according to the online survey of 625 likely voters, are issues like voting rights, abortion, and far ahead, crime.
If there's one issue that's pushing Alex Mealer up and pulling Lina Hidalgo down, it's the issue of crime and public safety, which is a real vulnerable issue for Harris County Democrats and County Judge Lina Hidalgo in particular.
But Democrats say they are confident in their ability to bring voters home and address crime.
Right now in County Commissioner's Court, we have 2 Republicans who refuse to show up to do their job. Well, if you want public safety to be at the forefront of people's minds, show up for work so that we can increase funding for law enforcement. We can increase funding for our mental health spending.
Mealer's campaign says the UH poll is solid confirmation that residents want new leadership in Harris County, adding, "I couldn't stomach sitting back and watching our public safety continue to erode." Judge Hidalgo's campaign released a statement saying, "We anticipated our race would be close, especially given the millions of dollars poured into our far-right opponent's campaign from known extremists, election deniers, anti-voting rights leaders, and developers eager to roll back regulations that help stop flooding to make a profit at our expense."
This is going to be an election that probably is determined by turnout more than anything else.
Another detail from the poll, it found Mealer outperforming Greg Abbott in the county, while Hidalgo is underperforming with Beto O'Rourke voters. The list of positions on this ballot is long, and as Jason Miles reported Monday, includes all 15 spots on the Texas State Board of Education.
Like many local school boards, including this one in Katy ISD,
I will protest you at your house,
that have recently become battlegrounds.
Can we have her removed, please?
Thanks to national issues not even relevant on most campuses.
We have politicized everything.
KHOU political analyst Bob Stein says the Texas State Board of Education no longer operates under the radar either.
They used to say there's no Republican or Democratic way to pick up the garbage. There is. And there used to be the case that teaching people how to read, doing arithmetic was a fundamental skill that didn't have a partisan bias. It does now.
All 15 seats on the state board are on the November ballot, each representing nearly 2 million Texans. But at least 2 incumbent Republicans were ousted in the primary.
Largely on the issue of critical race theory and other what we will call from the Republican conservative element, woke theory.
Republicans have held a majority on the state board for years, and conservative candidates in 5 districts made critical race theory a key component of their campaigns. Given that the board sets policies and curriculum standards for more than 1,200 public school districts across Texas, including the selection of textbook content, Stein anticipates an even more noticeable shift after the election.
And I think you'll see a lot more of that effort, that scrutiny, particularly on critical race theory, on anything dealing with gender and gender identification.
In Houston, Jason Miles, KHOU 11 News.
KHU 11 put together a voter's guide with all the information you need before you head to your polling place, whether that's during early voting or on November 8th. We'll text you the link if you text us the word VOTE to 713-526-1111. Monday kicked off the 5-day celebration known as the Festival of Lights, widely celebrated in the Hindu religion. Photojournalist Renee Levine captured the sights and sounds of the celebration in Fort Bend County.
Diwali is a festival of lights, and it's all about food, family, togetherness, colorful lights, coming together and celebrating as a community. It's just a time to really think about and reflect on our past year and how we can really move forward with goodness and light within us, and how we can give back to the community in the coming year. Diwali is good over evil, lightness over dark, and it's a reminder for us to reflect and think about how can we improve ourselves, how can we give back to our families, our community, and really spread that light within us to our community and the world.
On Tuesday, WNBA star and Houston native Brittany Griner lost her appeal to overturn her 9-year prison sentence in Russia. In August, a judge found her guilty of bringing vape cartridges containing cannabis oil into the country. Now, Griner can still appeal her verdict all the way to Russia's Supreme Court. The State Department confirms it's having active discussions with Moscow to free Griner and former Marine Paul Whelan. A local nonprofit is helping former incarcerated Texans become entrepreneurs by partnering them with local businesses for mentorship. On Tuesday, Aniela Ruiz explained how the program works.
Michael Galloway was supposed to be just another statistic.
I'd been in trouble since I was, 12 years old.
When he turned 21, he was charged with criminally negligent homicide.
I accidentally killed one of my best friends.
Michael says he was trying to unload a pistol when he accidentally let go of the hammer and the bullet killed his friend. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison.
I didn't feel like I was going to get out of there.
But his whole life was changed 3 years before the end of his sentence. He was contacted to join a nonprofit called Prison Entrepreneurship.
We use the vehicle of entrepreneurship to foster change in the prison population.
Brian Kelly, the CEO, says for 18 years his nonprofit has offered inmates in the state of Texas an opportunity for a fresh start while they're in prison. And along the way, they partner them with successful business people to help mentor them.
Education be damned. If you want something, just go learn about it, do what you need to do, and make it happen.
About 60% of the men in their program are violent offenders, with 40% of those having had a prior criminal history. And they say they have a 7.5% recidivism rate. Brian, the CEO himself, is a success story.
I was just in a desperate state, and I didn't know how to turn things around.
He was convicted with murder and served 22 years in prison. And although he knows it might be difficult for some of the victims' families to see them out of prison living their life,
it's in everybody's best interest if somebody who has caused harm and hurt to redirect those energies. We want to stop that cycle of poverty and crime. We don't want to have our graduates reoffend.
Something Mike says he doesn't take very lightly.
One of the biggest things that I struggled with was that I knew that my friend was no longer here. He doesn't get to be here to have a family. I needed to honor his life by how I lived out the rest of mine. And so I took that to heart.
The program does not take sex offenders. So far, they've helped start over 600 businesses. For more details, you can head to our website at khou.com. Anayeli Ruiz, KHOU 11 News.
On Tuesday, AAA announced it's offering car owners a possible deterrent to thieves: catalytic converter etching. Janelle Bluda found out the organization is also working with auto shops to provide the service on a regular basis.
Some white spray paint and a bit of etching might be all it takes to keep your catalytic converter.
A crime of opportunity. It's so quick to commit. It's so lucrative. The amount of money that they're getting paid for these catalytic converters is crazy.
The crime has been on the rise in the past years as the price of precious metals skyrockets.
To date, between January and now, approximately 3,000 catalytic converters have been stolen.
AAA says recyclers will pay $50 to $250 per catalytic converter.
A cut here and a cut right there is all it takes.
But the cost to replace one could be in the thousands. So doing something as simple as etching it might help. While they hope it is a deterrent to thieves, if yours does get taken, it could also help you recover it.
None of the catalytic converters have any kind of identifying. You would never know that this came off the Toyota 4Runner.
AAA is teaming up with 9 Houston area auto shops to offer free appointments for catalytic converter etchings. But if you aren't able to snag one of those, you could get the protection for free at your next service, like an oil change. It's part of their new program.
To have our AAA approved facilities like Christian Brothers here, they will be able to have their catalytic converters etched for free at participating AAA shops all over the state when they're in for a paid service.
The sheriff's office says the etchings will give them a better chance at finding the victims and stopping the crime.
The free appointments are fully booked, but AAA says they plan to add more. They also plan to add more shops that will offer the free etching along with any paid service. You can find more information on our website, khou.com.
Let's talk Astros and one of the team's superstars. Jeremy Pena walked away from the ALCS with the Most Valuable Player award, and Tuesday, Jason Bristol talked to someone who knows the Houston powerhouse well.
In place of Carlos Correa, there's a young man who's also shining during the postseason, or Correa time. Here's what he was like in college from someone who knows best.
The rookie shortstop of the Astros has been called many things, like clutch and this guy's an animal.
He's the only Dominican dude I know who went to University of Maine.
But Jeremy Pena's college head coach says Jeremy is something else, mean.
Jeremy Pena on the baseball field is a mean player.
Nick Durba from the University of Maine also remembers Jeremy as a raw prospect from Providence, Rhode Island, the son of a former big leaguer.
I think he just wanted to go somewhere where he was going to play and be cared for, and we weren't that far from home.
The most homers Jeremy hit in a college season was just 6.
He came in a little bit behind offensively, but still a good offensive player. But you knew he had something special talent-wise from day one.
Nick raves about Jeremy's work ethic, which helped transform Jeremy into the MVP of the American League Championship Series.
Shout out to my teammates. We show up every single day. We stay true to ourselves all year. And we're a step away from the ultimate goal.
He sounds nice and humble, so why does Durba call Jeremy mean? There is a catch.
He is out there for blood. He's out there to take care of business. He walks off that field and he is just a normal human being, and he's kind.
The kind of baseball player with a desire to wear one more label, World Series champion.
Grab your phone and text the word Astros to 713-526-1111. We'll hit you back with stories like the one on Pena, plus World Series schedules and updates. For the second time, a Harris County jury couldn't agree whether Antonio Armstrong Jr., better known as AJ, killed his parents. Matt Doherty was in the courtroom when the judge declared a mistrial on Wednesday.
We had a chance to speak with some of the jurors this evening. They told us although most of the jury thought Armstrong was probably guilty, some of them still had doubts.
It's time to let AJ go. It's time to let this young man go back to his life.
The defense attorneys representing AJ Armstrong made it clear outside of the courtroom today that their client should not be prosecuted again. The parents of AJ Armstrong were asleep in their bed back in 2016 when they were both shot and killed. Prosecutors claimed AJ had a tumultuous relationship with his parents, especially his father, former Miami Dolphins football player Antonio Armstrong. They say AJ used his dad's .22 to kill his parents, and records from the alarm system company show nobody entered the home that night, that the killer must have already been inside. Defense attorneys said all of this was untrue. They claim AJ loved his mom and dad, and that the alarm system was faulty. They also suggested the killer was possibly AJ's older schizophrenic brother, Josh.
And where is Josh?
Don't know. Ask the Houston Police Department.
One of the jurors we spoke with called these distractions, which ultimately led to a hung jury.
Everyone kind of had their mind made up, but it was very frustrating to hear everyone say, and I mean everyone say, we know he's not innocent, but we still have doubt.
AJ Armstrong remained silent throughout the trial and did not testify on his own behalf.
Can we hear from AJ at all today?
No, ma'am.
The prosecutors who tried the case didn't want to speak afterwards either. However, District Attorney Kim Ogg released this statement. Quote, we followed the evidence and stood up for Antonio Armstrong Sr. and Don Armstrong, who were murdered in their bed. It's unclear if the DA's office will elect to prosecute this case a third time. The family of A.J. Armstrong, including the parents whose daughter and son were killed 6 years ago, have supported their grandson from the start. They're hopeful prosecutors decide that 2 trials were enough. In downtown, I'm Matt Doherty, KHOU 11 News.
Also Wednesday, the man who shot and killed a beloved Harris County Sheriff's deputy learned his sentence. Jurors voted unanimously to give Robert Solis death. Solis gunned down Deputy Sandeep Dhaliwal during a traffic stop 3 years ago. 2 Harris County commissioners refused to vote on a new budget, which means departments like public health and flood control have to scale back or cut services. Gerald Harris dug into the trickle-down effects.
Republican commissioners are celebrating stopping the Democrats on Commissioners Court from putting in place their new budget. The impact will be widespread, according to county leaders.
It is vital that Harris Health remain a vibrant, funded entity and healthcare provider for this county.
According to Harris Health, the no new revenue outcome of yesterday's meeting means Harris Health System will be operating at a $45 million deficit in the fiscal year 2023.
And that exponentially increases as we go forward in time.
Practically, that means thousands of less patients being seen, a decrease in cancer screenings, and an impact to services offered for children, including those sexually abused.
So I do tell you that the impact is real. We are adjusting operations today.
The adjustment will be to break even in their operating budget despite the deficit, and labor management and hiring an $11.6 million deficit reduction. And strategic initiatives such as preventative screenings and healthcare expansions, such as longer clinic hours, telemedicine, and chronic disease management, that results in a $24.7 million deficit reduction. And purchase clinical services and supplies, an $8.5 million deficit reduction.
We are a vital element, a critical element of how healthcare is delivered within Harris County.
Other services impacted include law enforcement, such as Sheriff Ed Gonzalez's office. He says failing to adopt a budget is a big blow to our ability to deliver crime-fighting services. He also says the department must consider drastic cost-cutting measures, the most severe of which could mean canceling the upcoming Basic Peace Officers Cadet course of 60 possible law enforcement officers.
Law enforcement has been a focal point of the Harris County judges race. We asked Alex Mueller and Judge Lena Hidalgo about their stances on improving public safety and what should be done to secure voting integrity in Harris County. Their responses are posted on KHOU.com. If you weren't there, or maybe you just need a reminder, this is what it looked like in 1980 when the Astros lost the National League pennant to the Phillies. Matt Musil caught up with some of those players on Wednesday to find out if time really does heal all wounds.
When it became official that it would be the Astros versus the Phillies in the World Series, I immediately flashed back to the only other time the two teams faced off in the postseason. It was the 1980 NLCS. But I'm not the only one who's been flashing back.
That was the most bizarre series. A lot of people say, were they good memories or bad memories? They were bad memories.
The Astros lost that best-of-5 series in 5 games. 4 of them went to extra innings.
I got within 6 outs of a World Series, a 5-2 lead in the 8th inning, Nolan Ryan on the mound.
It was unbelievably exciting and incredibly heartbreaking.
Astros outfielder Terry Poole became a national household name during that series.
I hit .519, I believe. I was 10 for 19.
So who are the 1980 Astros picking to win this Astros-Phillies postseason matchup?
They run me out of town and say Dusty Baker. They're not losing, and they don't like to lose.
I got to go with Houston, and even if I were not a hometown guy, I would still go with Houston for the series.
I expected nothing else. Matt Musil, KHOU 11 Sports.
Thursday, some Uvalde parents took their calls for DPS Director Steve McCraw to resign to the Capitol. They made their case at a public hearing, and a few hours later, when Governor Greg Abbott made a campaign stop in Katy, Grace White asked if he'll get McCraw to step down.
Governor Abbott spoke to hundreds of people here in the parking lot outside Fuzzy's Pizza and in the crowd, Santa Fe families who confronted the governor. about school safety.
It's great to be in the Houston area, in Harris County, Fort Bend County.
With less than 2 weeks to go, Governor Greg Abbott not holding back.
When it comes to the economy, Texas has the fastest growing economy of any state in the United States of America.
Your officers were in there within 10 minutes.
While today in Austin, some Uvalde families called for DPS Director Steve McCraw to step down after his comments during a public hearing.
But I can tell you this right now, DPS is an institution, okay, right now, did not fail the community.
Despite months ago saying he would step down if his agency was at fault for the Uvalde response.
If you're a man of your word, you'll resign.
We tried asking Governor Abbott if he will call for McCraw's badge.
Governor Abbott, will you ask McCraw to resign? Uvalde families are asking for that.
But the governor did not respond or take any questions. Families from Santa Fe also showed up wanting to talk to the governor.
I wanted to hear what the governor had to say and if he was going to even touch on school safety or on our children's well-being since Uvalde and Santa Fe.
Scott Rice's wife, Flo, was injured in the Santa Fe shooting. He's been disappointed by the governor's inaction. Rhonda Hart lost her daughter, Kimberly Vaughn, at Santa Fe and supports calls for McCraw to resign after Uvalde.
I think they failed. I think across the board they failed, and I think that there's a lot more to that shooting.
Hey guys, ready right here?
But Abbott backers say they heard the message they came to hear: the economy and crime.
The property tax is a big one. So, there's a bunch of stuff to help the inflation.
You have your freedom back. You're safe on the streets.
As for the criminal investigation into the police response to the Uvalde shooting, McCraw says it should be finished by the end of the year. In Katy, Grace White, KHOU 11 News.
Reporter Tony Plahetsky with the Austin American-Statesman and our sister station KVUE did a 42-minute sit-down interview with DPS Director Stephen McCraw. You can find a link to that interview on khou.com. The City of Houston Animal Shelter says it has more animals than it can care for. Managers at BARK say more people are giving up their pets because they can't afford them. Brittany Ford shared there is a proposal on the November ballot that the shelter says could save animals' lives.
This is Altuve, surrendered by his owners to the City of Houston's BARK Animal Shelter. He's one of over 250 animals at the shelter in need of a home.
We try to tell the public we're starting the day off at capacity.
Corey Stoudemire with BARK says the shelter has been operating at its 300 capacity limit for months. He says adoption and foster care numbers are at an all-time low.
Inflation impacts across the board people's decisions into whether adding a new family member, a pet, or like our fosters.
Stoudemire says the lack of space and adoptions has forced them to put more animals down.
We have no kennel space for the incoming animals. We have to make that ultimate hard decision.
And there is a measure on the November ballot aimed to help the shelter with its ongoing capacity issues. Prop C proposes $47 million in bonds for animal care, including a new building for BARK. Tina Lanquist-Fost is co-president of Houston Pet Set, a nonprofit that works with local shelters.
But what we do know is that it would improve the shelter capacity at BARK.
Her agency working with shelters like BARK to find solutions and forever homes for sweet boys like Altuve.
Adopt from a shelter. We're in great need.
Brittany Ford, KHOU 11 News.
With the World Series getting underway Halloween weekend, one family has a spectacular way of showing their support. You could say they're die-hard fans. Zach Tawatari gave us a peek.
Well, we've met all kinds of Astros fans over the last few weeks, but this group is more than passionate. In fact, you could say they take their fandom to the grave.
This scene in Willis.
All the love that people have for the Astros and all the love they have for Halloween.
Unlike Minute Maid Park, you wouldn't consider the atmosphere here very lively.
The players are skeletons.
Ever since the Astros began their playoff run, Patty Norman has had a bone to pick with each new team.
So we've been changing the opposing team jerseys to go along with whatever place in this series we are.
It's a complete ballpark.
This is the Astros dugout with the coach, and the Phillies dugout is over there. And then we have 2 fan benches.
And the roster's far from bare bones.
Mainly baby clothes if you use commercial. The jerseys here are onesies.
This latest installment is the 3rd straight year she's featuring the human frames in 4 to 5 different scenes.
We take them down when it's mowed, and then we put them back up in a different scene. The beach, volleyball.
This year, Patty's hoping her support will help the Astros win it all.
I think the Astros are doing it all on their own.
A momentum she can feel in her bones.
They're on a roll, and it's a great time to be on a roll.
In Willis, Zach Tawatari, KHOU 11 News.
Of course, Friday was Game 1 of the World Series. No spoilers here, but if you want updates about the Astros and Phillies, you have a couple options. You can go to khou.com/Astros, or you can text the word Astros to 713-526-1111. That is where you'll find all our coverage. As we wrapped up our first week of early voting, anyone who's cast or looked at a ballot knows there are a lot of candidates up for jobs at the county, state, even national level. But if you don't believe in a supreme being, you can't run for office, according to the Texas state constitution. Now, the U.S. Constitution has a little something to say about that. Rekha Mudaraj explained why this rule that has never been enforced is still on the books.
As if you haven't seen enough political absurdity, put this one in the strange but true category. Texas is one of 7 states to have language in its constitution explicitly prohibiting atheists from holding office. Article 1, Section 4 of the Texas Constitution says there are no religious qualifications for holding public office, provided that person, quote, acknowledge the existence of a supreme being. But in the no religious test clause of the U.S. Constitution, it makes clear that restrictions like the one in Texas are unconstitutional. The language was challenged by a Texas voter in the mid-'80s. But instead of striking the language, the voter and then Attorney General Jim Maddox signed an agreement in federal court saying that line was void because of the U.S. Constitution. It came up again in 2014 when a candidate running for Austin City Council distributed a mailer claiming her opponent was an atheist and therefore legally barred from holding public office in the Lone Star State. So while the requirement can't be enforced, it's still on the books because it's never been legally challenged by a candidate, and no candidate has been denied the opportunity to serve because of it. I'm Rekha Mudaraj for KHOU 11 News.
If you've heard of any haunted place in spring, it's probably the Wunschie Brothers Cafe, most notably that those brothers, Charlie and Dell, like to visit, if you know what I mean. But Old Town Spring is full of so many more stories and sightings.
It's been, I can't believe it, 6.5 years.
6.5 years since Angela Miller moved Trilogy Brew into this historic and reportedly haunted building.
I've definitely had employees that have heard things.
Trilogy Brew actually has earned itself the nickname of Trilogy Boo, and that's because this building is actually very, very haunted. It's one of the most active buildings in Old Town Spring.
Karen Miller, no relation, is the owner of Old Town Spring Ghost Walk.
And we always tell people, come walk with the dead.
Here they can walk with the Kaplan family.
Sadly, a lot of the Kaplan family got hit with Spanish flu and passed away in the upstairs of this building. Now, the little boy Henry is very active in here.
Miller says his favorite toy is this bunny, which often moves around overnight, disappearing and reappearing.
A couple days ago, he showed up on the coffee table down there.
As for little Henry's dad,
Mr. Kaplan is really grumpy, as the owners will tell you. If they do not close the doors upstairs, he will slam those doors and you'll hear them slamming.
That's just the beginning of the tour and the stories that haunt Old Town Spring.
This place is so crazy active.
K2 meter in hand.
If that little green light goes to red, instead of you checking the ghosts out, something's checking you out.
Miller took me to a few of the spookiest sites, including what started out as an ice house in 1902 and eventually became a morgue.
Now, when the morgue closed, there was a problem. There was 2 bodies left in the cellar here. They didn't know what to do with them, so they just filled the cellar in. And this is the 2 entities that we tell you about when you come on tour with us. But you have to be very careful. These entities are very possessive of their ice house, and they will soon let you know.
The tour moved on.
This area here is haunted by a young girl called Sarah.
But it still felt like something lingered. Ever since we visited the old makeshift morgue, this is lit up pretty consistently, 3 out of 5. Like to consider myself pretty open-minded. I'm a little freaked out.
Times Square is unique because we actually have 3 hauntings in this area, all in one area, if you can believe it.
So if you want to seek out the supernatural, spring is the spot.
The minute it gets dark and all those shop owners leave, it turns into a totally different thing.
If this is your cup of tea, pop on over to our Spooky Spaces playlist and watch our special looking at the most haunted spots all over Texas. Wings Over Houston flew into Ellington Field this weekend, including the Blue Angels. Stephanie Simmons talked to the team leader on Friday.
I'm here with Captain Brian Kesselring, flight leader of the Blue Angels. That is quite a prestigious title. Talk to us about the requirements of being part of such an elite organization.
Well, probably the largest requirement is being part of the Navy or the Marine Corps. You know, every one of us is one of 800,000 active duty reserve and civilian support personnel who are out there serving today. And for us, you know, to apply for this particular position, I was a former commanding officer of an F-18 squadron in the fleet with over 3,000 hours and put my name in the applications. All of our folks are hand selected from across the fleet with, you know, somewhere between 6 to 20 years of experience in the Navy and Marine Corps before they come to this team.
And we're not talking about just men, is that right?
Absolutely, men and women across the board. You know, we're a meritocracy here. So if you do well in the Navy and Marine Corps, it doesn't matter what you look like, what your gender, what your belief structure is. If you believe in our core values and you want to come represent our services, you can be part of this team.
Talk to us about the mission of the Blue Angels.
You know, our mission really is to inspire. You know, we inspire a service to country, or just inspire you in what you do in your daily life.
It's been a few years since the Blue Angels have been here at the Houston Air Show. So what do you have in store for folks this year?
Well, I'll tell you, it's our 76th season and just our 2nd season flying these wonderful aircraft. As you can see, these F-18 Super Hornet here behind us. Just our 2nd year here flying that type of aircraft. That's the aircraft that's out there in our aircraft carriers today doing the mission. So they get a chance to see those aircraft up close and personal. So smoke coming out. With that aircraft came, you know, some new twists on old maneuvers that we did. So folks who are familiar with our show will see something a little bit different.
Well, when you're up there and you're doing those demos, for people that haven't seen it, the margin of error is so slim. How close do the jets get to each other?
Right, we'll get in our closest maneuvers. We'll get anywhere between 12 to 18 inches apart.
Hope that helped you catch up on this past week and you are ready for the next one. Remember, you can tune into KHU 11 on air online via KHU.com and YouTube, as well as by using our KHU 11 Plus app on Roku and Fire TV. Have a great week.